Amir Hamza was invited by a dormitory operator. He came into Singapore on Independence Day, 9th of August 2024. He preached to a group of Bangladeshi migrant workers on the same day at a dormitory. And he did so without a permit. That was unlawful. In his sermon, he made statements which were extremist and segregationist. And he left Singapore the next day on the 10th of August. Members have raised a number of questions, whether Amir was on the watch list of the security agencies, and more broadly, the way in which persons come through Singapore's borders. There are a number of steps taken at our borders, as many members will be aware. Nationals of some countries are required to apply for visas even before they come in. Bangladesh is one such country. Applications from those on our watch list or otherwise raises some questions will usually be rejected. All travelers are also required to submit an SG arrival card before arriving in Singapore. ICA uses that information, other information it receives, and information from advanced passenger lists from airlines, including flight manifests, other sources of information, and they use that to conduct a pre-arrival risk assessment of the travelers. When the traveler comes into Singapore, he or she is screened against a watch list of persons, even as they undergo immigration clearance. Those on the watch list are identified to be of higher risk by ICA's back-end data analytics will be checked further. ICA officers also look out for persons whose reasons for appearing or visiting Singapore may appear dubious, or for other reasons who require further checking, and they might be required to undergo further checks. In July 2020, we also introduced the multimodal biometric system. First-time visitors will have their facial, iris, and fingerprint images captured at immigration clearance, and that allows us to better detect repeat visitors who may try and come in using multiple identities or impersonated identities. For foreign visitors, this is usually done, obviously, on the first occasion they visit Singapore. Our automated gates are generally able to detect forged passports as well. But since 2022, every month, about 30 visitors with legitimate passports but containing a different identity from ICA's records were detected and refused entry. In all, for various reasons, about 2,500 visitors are refused entry at our checkpoints every month. Amir Hamza was on our watch list. ISD had put him on the watch list, and that's because he has made statements promoting religious intolerance and for a few other reasons. He applied for a visa to enter Singapore using a passport with a name that was different from what we had in our database. And therefore, that other name was not on our watch list. And he used that passport on 9 August to come into Singapore. As this was his first visit to Singapore, we did not have his biometrics. If he tries to come back again, regardless of what other passport he uses, he will be picked up because we now have his biometrics. Members have asked questions about broadly the security at our borders. There are about 600,000 travelers every day coming into Singapore, coming and going across all our checkpoints. Members will appreciate we have to develop a framework for picking up some people of concern while allowing the vast majority to clear as quickly as possible. You need to strike a balance between security and facilitation at our borders. It is not possible nor practicable to subject every visitor, obviously, to stringent, detailed checks and interviews. And no country has a comprehensive database of every criminal or person of security concern across the world. Certainly, Singapore does not have such a database. So, in summary, in terms of persons coming in, the majority of persons who are who are perceived to have dubious reasons or purposes for coming into Singapore are picked up either through the visa scheme or even without visas through other information that we have at various levels. And I've said about 2,500 are rejected every month. Some of them with visas, some of them without visas. But it is always possible that a small number will get through despite the several levels of checks. And members must also understand that the levels of checks and our information gathering varies depending on the type and extent of risk. Obviously, ISD, together with its foreign counterparts, will have a closer sort of awareness of persons who may want to do us physical harm in Singapore. And I won't go into operational considerations, but there are a number of ways in which those persons would be picked up more easily. No system is foolproof, but there are different levels of checks. Members have also asked about the rules and regulations governing events at migrant worker dormitories and the actions the government has taken to ensure that dorm operators comply. The Public Order Act requires event organizers to apply for a police permit for cost-based events that are open to the public. The speech at the dormitory would be one such event. It applies to events involving religious teachings, regardless of whether the event takes place at a dormitory or elsewhere. Specifically for foreign worker dormitories, the Foreign Employee Dormitories Act imposes license conditions that require operators to keep updated records of all non-residents, including visitors, contractors who enter the living areas of the dormitories. Third, foreigners who wish to speak at public events that are religious, cause-based, or political in nature are required to obtain a miscellaneous work pass under the Employment of Foreign Manpower Act. The Ministry of Manpower consults relevant agencies, including Internal Security Department, in its assessment when such applications are received. In this case, investigations are ongoing. No arrests have yet been made. The offenses that are being looked into include participation in an unlawful assembly under the Public Order Act, not obtaining a miscellaneous work permit required under the Employment of Foreign Manpower Act. The dormitory operator was also the event organizer. He is being investigated for several offenses, including those under the Public Order Act, Employment of Foreign Manpower Act, and the Foreign Employee Dormitories Act. Mr. Parekh asked how often such events occur within our migrant worker dormitories. I assume he means events without authorization. Based on our records and assessment, this sort of event doesn't usually take place. It's very rare because somebody will have to be actively in breach of all of these requirements. And of course, if we detect it, swift action will be taken. We will continue to educate and remind our dormitory operators to ensure that they obtain the relevant approvals before conducting such activities in the dormitories. And of course, our best safeguard is a public that stays vigilant, reports these sorts of individuals and activities to the agencies.
I seek the Minister's confirmation whether a photograph also was required to be submitted by the preacher in the course of his visa application, and whether there are particular processes by which that individual, as he is pictorially represented or represented in the picture, is cross-checked with the watch list. And if there isn't such a process, can the Minister confirm whether, beyond my supplementary question, improvements are being considered to capture individuals who are already existing on a watch list and clearly present a different level of threat as compared to the average person who walks through our immigration gates?
Visas require photographs. Photographs, I believe, were submitted. I haven't checked on this case. The normal process would be, it would be cross-checked against the watch list. It depends on the type of photograph that is submitted and the quality of the photograph. It may not always pick up against the database that we have. And without going into details, I think the member also assumes that in our database there will be photographs of all those who are listed in the watch list. As I said, no country in the world has such a comprehensive set of data on all potential persons who might have to be excluded. Sometimes we will only have names without photographs. As for the ability to cross-check, my understanding is that our systems are very advanced, and if there is a broad match in the photographs, they would have picked up. But the question assumes that we had a photograph to cross-check against.